to a website for a multitude of disclosures, and we won't cover those today. But it is interesting as you talk to the sellers that we've been talking to recently, not everybody is aware that there are these mandates, these statutes that are in place. And there's others. There's federal guidelines for lead-based paint and so forth. But Denise and I thought that these were the two that come up in our area and our marketplace prevalently. So we thought we'd just kind of discuss these two very important issues. Hey, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. As always, it's really great to see you. You know, recently we've been doing a lot of paperwork with our sellers, listing agreements, disclosures, etc. And during this, we started to realize that not everybody knows, not all of our sellers know that there are two required state mandated disclosures that they need to present to a buyer during the contract process.
Yeah, and there are two of, sometimes they're more than that, but
Yeah.
I think the more common ones that we see all the times are the ones that we talk about. And the first one is, it comes from the Virginia Property Owners Association Act.
It's a lot to say.
Oh, yes, it is. And what it means really is that the owner of the home or their agent is mandated by the state to present to the buyers a disclosure package. And it comes from the HOA community that the house resides in. And the real importance of that is so that when you're buying a home, and in Virginia, we talked about this in a previous video, Virginia is a buyer beware state.
Caveat emptor.
Which means a lot of the onus is left on the buyer to find out as much about that property. And so the reason that they do this HOA disclosure package is so the buyer can read through all the bylaws, the financial stability of this HOA, what it covers, what it doesn't, what the rules are, what kind of plants you have, what color you can paint your door, so that the buyer can make a real educated, informed decision as to that's a community I want to live in.
Yeah, and again, it's the guidelines. We used to call those the conditions, restrictions and conditions of a property. So the HOA uses those to kind of maintain the community the way that everybody has agreed to. And financially, one of the things that comes to my mind as I listen to you talk about this is that an HOA can mandate special assessments, right?
Correct.
For repairs to the community, whether it's the pool, the clubhouse, it could be many different things that they could mandate a special assessment. And then, of course, the HOA disclosure also includes condos in addition to that.
Yes.
Condos are even more inclusive with regard to items that can be covered under those fees, and they too can go ahead and mandate a special assessment.
Which means higher fees, or it could be a one-time fee, but it could be incorporated into your HOA dues that those go higher every year, every 2 years. So it's really good to look at all those documents before purchasing a home.
Yeah, and an HOA, a condo association, have the power to levy a homeowner as well. They can file, run it through a court system, and place a judgment on a property owner, not only for not paying their HOA or their condo fees, but for not paying any special assessments. So it's quite, it can be quite intrusive if you don't look at it as a benefit for the entire community, right?
But one of the benefits, I've always said, there's plus and minuses to the HOA. Obviously, that's not one of the pluses. That's something that would concern a buyer. But the advantage that I've seen and a lot of our buyers have talked about is that, you have the standard is set for the area. And everybody takes care of their property, has to take care of their property to a certain extent.
Can work very well.
And it makes the community very beautiful and very makes you very proud of the area you live in, for sure.
Yeah, it can certainly be a benefit to everyone else. The other one that is mandated actually to pretty much all residential transactions or transfers is the residential property disclosure statement. And this has come into place in essence for, we like to tease to say it's a disclosure not to disclose, but it is mandated to sellers to provide it to the buyer. We like to do it prior to the ratification or the final agreement of the contract so that the buyer is aware there is a website which is outlined on this beautiful document
Yes.
that takes the buyer to a disclosure form that basically says the seller really doesn't have to disclose much, if anything, to you. You, the buyer, again in Virginia, caveat emptor, means that you, the buyer, need to do your due diligence.
Yes.
It's an interesting statute because it's one, kind of like the HOA, that cannot be waived by the buyer. The buyer actually has to accept this, and then they have a 3-day right of rescission if it's not done on this disclosure prior to the agreement or the ratification of the contract. So we all try to get this done as early in the process. Hopefully we get it done prior to this ratification, because that doesn't give the buyer the right to rescind the contract for really any reason at all.
Correct.
So it's an interesting predicament that you can find yourself in. So we try to get that done early. But the statute really takes the buyer to a website for a multitude of disclosures, and we won't cover those today. But it is interesting as you talk to the sellers that we've been talking to recently, not everybody is aware that there are these mandates, these statutes that are in place. And there's others. There's federal guidelines for lead-based paint and so forth. But Denise and I thought that these were the two that come up in our area and our marketplace prevalently. So we thought we'd just kind of discuss these two very important issues.
Yes.
And the HOA, speaking of the right to rescind, the HOA, the condo disclosure also has that right to rescind, correct?
As well. Yep. And we always tell our buyers, I know it's a little intimidating for buyers when they realize that they're kind of signing away all of that.
It's a whole lot of paperwork.
That's right. But it's why it's really important you work with agents who will be able to educate you on that. Ask as many questions as you want. Do your due diligence and look into these properties. Look at the area. Read the newspapers. But you really want an agent who knows those areas that can help you. If you're buying a house with a well and septic for the first time, or you're buying a house in an area you're not familiar with, it's really important to find an agent who knows that area.
And an HOA community, right? We talked about this. And then, for the sellers that, we talked recently about the expired listings. And for those sellers that may be trying to sell their homes themselves, these are disclosures that in the process could actually turn into a nightmare if they're not made right at the very beginning of the transaction. So get yourself a good agent, get yourself an agent that has been around for a while, that's probably lived through some of these nightmares, lived to tell about them, and has built up their experience, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, as always, we hope that the information that we share with you each week is beneficial. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. There's a lot going on as we start off the next month of June, so we will keep you updated as we can.
Yes, and please, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. Would greatly appreciate that.
You're going to have a lot of fun with that channel.
Oh, yes.
Till next week, we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.